So it's not quite as bad a problem as you think it is. Only effects have to be rendered. Yeah, this is another thing. Look at the, how about the engine under your hood? That's a good one. Okay, does that have to be rendered? No, but the effects of it have to be rendered. And the probability of whether it's going to start or not has to be rendered. And how about those people that talk to their cars, right? And they say, come on, Bessie, just one more mile, you know. If you can just get me there, you know, I'll wash you, you know, or whatever. And they talk to their cars, they talk, you know, and what happens? Do you think that makes any difference? Now, your scientists would say, no, it doesn't make any difference, you know, but we know that it does, don't we? Because we can talk to that car, and if we really care about that car, and we love that car, and we are friends with that car, and we communicate with that car, then that car will do amazing things for us. Even when it should have broken down long ago, we're still going on it. And it waits until we get home before it breaks down. You know, it does things for us like that. And you'd say, well, that's just circumstance. Well, sometimes it might be. But what about the people who curse their cars? What about the people who always, you know, damn bucket of bolts and this kind of thing? Do those people have any harder time? Are they the ones that get stranded, you know, 50 miles from the nearest telephone someplace because the car quit? Yeah. Okay, so what's happening is that it's not that you are you know, changing the car. It's that the way virtual reality works, you know, enables you and your consciousness. Your consciousness, you have this virtual reality. That's how you can affect this reality. Just because it's virtual, your consciousness, intent moves things. Your intent for that car to work better, or the relationship you have with your dog or your cat, you know, all these things, it's your consciousness, their consciousness, you know, the car. You are actually having an effect. So the engine doesn't have to be rendered. You'll lift the hood. Now, when you lift the hood, they need to render an engine. But the probability of how that engine performs, yeah, that's there. And you can modify that probability with your intent, because that's just the future probable reality. You can modify those little spikes we saw sticking up there on that. You can make that spike stick up a little higher or pull it down a little bit, because that hadn't happened yet. And you can modify what's going to happen in the future with your intent, because it's just probability at that point. It's consciousness. It's just data. You can affect data with your intent. So that's how those sorts of things work. They don't have to be rendered. So once you believe, you see that everything is physical and it's all here, and you don't understand it's a virtual reality, then all those things become impossible. And then all those people who know that they have relationships with things like that and that it makes a difference, you know, then they're all nuts. You know, they're all just imagining it. And perhaps some of them are imagining it, but there are a lot of things that we can change because of our intent. Now, what drives our intent? It drives the kind of, you know, it comes from the kind of person we are. If we're a very loving person, we get a different kind of intent than if we're a very fearful person. Well, have you ever noticed that people who are very loving and have very good intents also tend to have very nice things happen to them? Life works good for them. They tend to be happy. They're not, you know, they're not negative. They're very positive. And hey, when something happens that other people would run off and cry, they just smile and say, well, that's okay. That's life. You know, it happens sometimes, and they go on. You see? It's different. So their life is very different because their intents create a life for them that's very different. So that gets us back to the fundamental point that you create your own reality. Now, you're not creating it in that you say, I'm hungry, you know, I want to create a, you know, a sandwich or something. That's not what I mean by you create your own reality. What I mean is that there are certain things that you have in your mind that affect your consciousness that affects the reality that you end up interacting with. It affects your relationships. It affects how well your car works. It affects all kinds of things in your life. So you do create your own reality. You create it in several ways. You create it, one, because of your interpretation. Something happens, you interpret it. Now, a person who is grown and has a lot of love and caring, something happens that's bad, you know, they may just, it won't make them angry. They just deal with it in a pleasant way, and that probably diffuses greater anger, so they don't have to then deal with the reaction to the reaction to the reaction. So it gets better. It doesn't mean that nothing ever bad happens to you. It just means you optimize your reality as you go. So one, what's inside of you, your intent helps create what happens. The second thing is that you have beliefs, and your beliefs and what you understand and your limitations and your experience interpret everything. So that's another way you create your reality. Somebody says something to you and you interpret it as a rude remark, or somebody's, they're making fun of you when maybe they didn't mean that at all. That's just your interpretation. So you create your reality that way as well. So most of what we encounter in life is self-made. Most of our problems are self-made. Most of our tragedies are self-made. That's just the way it is. And some of them are there because we need them as lessons. Some of them are there is because we generate them. While I'm talking about generating things, we'll talk about fear for just a moment. Fear has that property that what you fear, you manifest. Fear tends to manifest itself. So if you're afraid that nobody will like you, you will probably act in a way to make people like you less. If you're afraid that you are not adequate, you will probably act in a way that will be inadequate. You tend to generate, you tend to manifest your fears. If you fear that you're going to get ill and die, you have a higher probability of getting ill and dying. Okay, the mind modifies your reality. What about